Hey there, everybody. Derick Van Ness here again. And I am excited today because I've got a very special guest, Rick Durfee. I'll tell you a little bit more about Rick here in just a minute, but we're going to be talking about the business owner's legacy and protection blueprint. I talk to clients like you all of the time. And if you're at all interested in how do I protect my assets? How do I grow my assets safely? How do I pass it on? How do I structure all this stuff, both for tax, financial, and protection efficiency? Rick is the guy. He's our go-to guy, works with a ton of our clients, and I'm really, really excited to share this with you. The first time I worked with Rick absolutely blew my mind, and he's going to do some things today that I think are going to really get your imagination going and help you start understanding what is actually possible, because I know the idea for a lot of people of like wills and trusts and all that stuff is a little bit, feels like a necessary evil. But I have to say, once you learn how this works and start implementing this in your life, it creates so much clarity, so much confidence, so much certainty that you're going to be able to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. And so it's just long overdue that we share this with the audience so that you guys can really see what's out there and how it might work for you. So, Rick, really happy to have you here. I'm going to put up your bio real quick here so people can read a little bit about you, but really, really happy to have you here today.
Hey, it's awesome to be here, and I'm looking forward to this, Derick. It's great.
Yeah, and so just so you guys know, Rick is my personal attorney for legacy planning. He founded Durfee Law Group, has been at this, as you can see here, for a very long time. And that's one of the things I love is Rick's got all the stories. He's seen all the battles, all the things that can go wrong, has a real working knowledge, not just in theory, but in practice about how these things play out in real life and why it's so important to protect yourself, because a lot of the stuff we talk about isn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and you just don't know what situation's going to happen in your life, right? So without too much more hype or glamour here, Rick, I would love to kind of turn the floor over to you. And for those of you who are watching at the end of this, we are going to have a chance to potentially talk with Rick and or get a free gift that we're going to give. So you're going to want to stick around for that. But Rick, I'm going to kind of let you take it from here. I'm going to turn off the slides and just kind of let you talk us through, you know, the blueprint for business owners and how do you really do this to protect your legacy and create multi-generational wealth.
Super. Thank you, Derick. And I want to add for our listeners and viewers that the kind of planning that we do, it's not a solo exercise. It's not something where there's a hot shot, one person does their thing and that's it. It really is a team play, and it's awesome to be able to work with Derick and the Big Life team and be able to collaborate with them to come up with solutions and strategies that actually help our clients, our mutual clients and business owners thrive and succeed. With what Derick said, I was reminded of a story that I heard once. I think it's mostly true. There was once a young, ambitious business owner who wanted to succeed, and so he decided he needed a mentor. And he looked at the most successful business owner in his community that he could find, and he said, "Let me take you out to lunch." And at lunch, he asked a question. He said, "So what's the secret to success?" And the business owner said, "Oh, that's easy. Good decisions." Well, okay, that's not really that helpful. What's the secret to good decisions? And the business owner said, "Oh, that's easy too. Experience." And so the young, ambitious individual said, "Well, okay, that's not really satisfying either. What's the secret to experience?" And the seasoned business owner said, "Oh, that's the easiest of all, bad decisions." So I've been around long enough and done enough things for a few decades that I've made my fair share of bad decisions and worked with clients that have been through similar things. So we're going to show you today some things that are going to help you avoid bad decisions and plan so that even if there are some decisions that aren't exactly spot on, the recovery is quicker and easier. I'm going to share my screen here with you. I want to kind of show this from this perspective of a business owner. And I'm going to start from the assumption that this business owner, which is the couple you see here on the left, that they have a partnership, and they own this business, we'll just say 50-50. And this is a pretty classic thing. We see this with a lot of professionals, with a lot of entrepreneurs that will own something jointly with other people. And one of them makes their way to Derick's office, and by way of getting good advice from Derick, ends up we work together as a team and we come up with some planning. And for now, I'm just going to keep that simple. We're just going to say he does some really good planning, and he causes his 50% of this business to be owned in this protected structure, so that there's vigorous protection and some tax benefits and protection from creditors and liabilities, and that's really awesome. And he's really thriving and succeeding with that. But his partner goes, "Are you kidding me? I'm not going to waste my money on that. That's expensive, and it takes time, and I'm not going to do that." And then guess what happens? Well, our business owner here, life is beautiful and wonderful and great, but business partner has life's drama, and it can be several different things. It could be a divorce, it could be a death or an incapacity, it could be a lawsuit, and all of those things. Even though you think, well, this is an LLC, right? It's protected from the liabilities and creditors of the owners, right? And it may be, but let's just talk about the first example we mentioned, which is divorce. They get divorced, and the business is worth enough that our partner over here can't buy out his wife, and suddenly our business owner here is partners now with the ex-wife of his partner. Ouch. Or let's say he dies, partner dies, bummer again, and now once again business owner is partners with his wife because that's what he said in his estate plan. Or, and I've had this happen too, there's a big nasty lawsuit and they sue everybody here for some unrelated thing. Let's say they had some other side deal that goes sideways and results in liability. And our business owner here, he's totally 100% protected, but his partner isn't. And when it comes down to paying the piper, and I've actually had this happen, I'm going to tell you a true story. Sitting in a conference room with 5 business partners in this similar structure, several of which had done good planning like we're going to talk about today, and 2 that had not. And when we sat down with the litigation lawyers and the bankers and everybody, after a conversation, we laid out the planning that our clients had done. The response was, "You're right. Your clients are excused. You may leave the room. We can't get anything out of you, so you can go away." And we left the room happy. And I told my clients, "Way to go. We were able to protect you from these bad things, and you're going to be protected and not liable for all this nastiness that's coming along." Well, the next day, my clients, 3 of them, all called me and said, "Oh, we're going to pay the judgment." I said, What? We protected you. You were safe. You had the get out of jail free card. They walked away. They were going to leave you alone." And they said, "Yeah, but our partner, the bozo, who refused to do any planning, came to us and said, 'You dirty, rotten scumbag, if you don't pay your share of the damages, they're going to make us pay. And you dirty, rotten scumbag, why should we pay your share? We're going to hate you forever.'" And so my clients caved into the peer pressure. And instead of telling their partners, "Pound sand, you moron, you should have done the planning when we told you to in the first place," ponied up and paid the judgment. So there are some things we can do. And the main point I want to make at this point is what your partner does or does not do can hurt you, and can hurt you in a big way. So it's great for you to do your planning, but you also have to be mindful of whether or not the other players on your team have done theirs, because if they haven't, their problem can become your problem. And that's one of the things we want to avoid. And by the way, I want to add here, we'll just throw in something here that something they could have done, and we're not going to spend a lot of time here other than to give it mention, is they could have implemented a buy-sell agreement. And a buy-sell agreement deals with all of the D's. The D's. Divorce, death, disability, deadbeats, and disgruntlement. There's 5 of them. 5 D's. What happens if a partner dies? What happens if they're divorced? What happens if they're disabled? What happens if they're a deadbeat and they just stop showing up? And I've had that happen with clients where they had a good partner and suddenly the guy moves to another place and stops returning phone calls and emails and just won't be there. Or is a deadbeat, just won't pay his share. So a buy-sell agreement properly crafted is part of the overall plan. But I want to unpack for a minute here what our client's going to do. And so I'm going to move partner and his spouse over to the side here for a second. And I'm going to assume we have this buy-sell agreement in place. And we're going to pull this subsidiary entity down and we're going to do something. I want to unpack what this little icon does in some more details. And Derick mentioned, wills and powers of attorneys and things like that are boring, and they are, but they're essential. And everybody over the age of 18 ought to have them. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that, other than to mention that it's in those documents where you name people who will make decisions on your behalf in the event that you can't because you're incapacitated or unavailable or out of the country. And there's generally 3 groups of decision makers. Who's going to make financial and legal decisions for you? Who's going to make medical decisions for you or end-of-life decisions? And who's going to have custody of minor persons or incapacitated adult persons? And I'm just going to mention, if you think, all my children are grown, they're all adults. 1 in 5 sets of grandparents in the U.S. today ends up raising their grandchildren. So, or has an incapacitated adult living in their home. So we take care of all that on those basic documents, but that's not really very sexy or fun. So I'm going to walk through and kind of build this for you and show you a typical kind of structure. And by the way, we're going to list on any kind of diagram. We build a diagram like this for all of our clients. It's part of the planning process. It helps us visually explain and demonstrate what the heck is going on. This diagram becomes a very powerful tool that then the advisory team uses. We send this to your tax people and your insurance people and your investment people and your Derick's team and smart people like that who go, oh, now I get it. Now I can see what's going on. And then we can update the details from time to time. And by the way, when people tell me, oh, I've done all my planning, a diagnostic tool we use is, well, let's diagram it. Let's map it out. And when we do that, often we find that there are gaps or overlaps or issues. So
let me just hop in here real quick, Rick. One of the things that I've learned going through this process is most of us don't know what we don't know about this, right? We know wills and trusts. We've seen the movies where like the guy does the video and it makes people go on a life quest so they can get their inheritance and all these kinds of things. But like people don't really know much more than like this glamorized stuff you've seen on TV. And if you know anything about TV, you know that it's not an accurate depiction of real life, right? The way that those court cases go down, the way that the cops do things. I've been a dancer my whole life. When I watch dance movies, I cringe because most of the dancing they're doing in movies is just not actually like how people dance at all, right? And anything you know much about, you're like, TV doesn't do a great job of this. And I think it's the same thing for estate planning. People sort of have there's the really boring stuff, and then there's this exotic billionaire, he left you an island, but now you have to jump through all this hoops and go on a life adventure to find yourself sort of thing. But the reality is obviously somewhere in the middle. And I think it's important for people who feel like I have done my planning to understand that you probably have very little idea of what it really looks like to do planning, especially when you get to what I consider to be the really exciting stuff, which is like the true impact, multi-generational, set people up for success type of planning, more than just, hey, we're going to avoid going through probate. which is really important, but not super sexy. So I just think people don't know what they don't know. So even if you think you know this, I promise when you go through this, if you don't learn something new, you can send me a nasty email, but I'm pretty sure that you're going to learn a lot more than you think.
So I was actually really disappointed when I became an attorney and practiced in this field that I have not yet had the experience of sitting in a wood paneled room lined with old books and reading the will to tell the family members what they are or are not going to get. That just doesn't happen. It never happens. That kind of drama would be entertaining, and unfortunately we don't get it. And there's some reasons why we don't get it. And one of them I'm about to show you here. Most of the time today, if we do things right, if people are paying attention, we're not going to be dividing up property through a will, because a will requires probate. And a lot of people think, oh, I have a will, I'm not going to go to probate. No. A will requires probate. It is not valid or effective until a judge says so. To get a judge to say so, we're going to court and saying, Mother, may I pretty please make this will effective and appoint the people and give the stuff to the people who want to. And then you have this partnership with the courts that takes time and costs money and is adversarial. And the lawyers go around poking each other in the eye or poking their clients in the eye. And so it triggers family fights. By the way, it's about the number of estates that end up in litigation or near litigation conflicts tracks pretty close to what the divorce rate is. It's more than half. And if we can, by the way, have a good, strong marriage and stay married forever, that's better than going through a divorce. And if you've had that experience, I hope that you see that light. In the same way with an estate, if we can administer an estate and keep the family out of divorce, or out of the court with probate, it's a huge victory. And a little demographic here that I talk about in a book you can find called Trust Issues at length, that inherited wealth, only about 9% of inherited wealth makes it to generation 3. It gets blown apart. It's gone by generation 3. And there's this wealth cycle where one generation makes it, the next generation enjoys it and destroys it. The third generation gets the pickings and the leftover. The fourth generation starts over. And that goes round, around, 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 around. And how many people, maybe some of the listeners here go, yeah, my grandparents were rich. I'm not rich. What happened to that? So we want to disrupt that cycle. And part of the planning is what we're going to talk about here. And one of the mechanisms for that is a revocable living trust. And if you can see this enough, I'm going to zoom up on this so it's a little bigger for the screen share here. A trust is poorly understood and poorly implemented by a lot of people. It is a contract that controls property over time. And as a contract, it has 3 parties. There's the grantor, the person who creates it. And with this trust, that person retains the power to revoke or amend it. There's the trustee, that's the executive that runs it. And there's the beneficiaries, that's the people who enjoy it. And with this kind of trust, our client here is going to be in all 3 of those chairs. They're going to be the grantors, the trustees, and the beneficiaries. And they're going to designate, well, who's going to be the trustees after them? And that can be their kids. That can be an independent trustee. There's some complex issues that go on in that. And then we need this trust to own stuff. So it's got to own your bank accounts and your personal property. And it may need to be a beneficiary on your retirement accounts and annuities and other things. Probably should own your personal residence and should own your business. And this is a key element that business owners often fail to understand. And in fact, attorneys advising business owners fail to implement this. This trust is a key component of your business succession plan. I have a buddy, a neighbor who's a contractor, and he was telling me one day he had a client who designed a room all on his own and did a little CAD drawing and said, I want you to build this room. And he looked at the room and he said, how do we get in and out? There's no door. there's no door to get in or get out. So if you're going to build a room, you got to have an exit. Same with your business. I'm sorry to inform you that you are not immortal. The probability of death is 100%. And so you have a life cycle of your business. There's going to be a building time and an enjoying time. And then there's going to be why do I have this thing? I don't need it anymore. Let's do something else with the time. And then there's going to be a time when you're not here anymore. And we need to manage that life cycle and plan for it. And the trust is a key element of that. And it does a lot of things. It avoids probate, and it's a succession vehicle. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because there's other cool stuff we can talk about, but I do want to point out, I'm going to put on here a diagram real quickly and then delete it because I don't want to get too bogged down in this. But one of the things we do with this trust is manage what happens on the first death. And a lot of people don't know, but when you die, there's a tax on your stuff. Guess what? The politicians have figured out if you're going to tax somebody, the best people to tax are the dead ones. Dead ones don't vote. They don't write their congressman. They don't march on Washington. So if you're going to rip off somebody, rip off a dead person. And so there's a tax. Now, at the moment, in fact, in recent months with new legislation that came down, there's this exemption to that tax. And the tax is called, on the federal level, it's called an estate tax. And there's an exemption. There's actually a complicated way of getting to the exemption. It's actually a credit. But we get this exemption that we can pass a certain amount of assets to our heirs or beneficiaries without paying that tax. And currently that's $15 million per person. Well, we got two people up here and they're married. And there's another exemption called the unlimited spousal exemption, where if a spouse gives stuff to another spouse, there's no tax on that. And as a result of that, between spouses, on the first death, if we do not use the exemption of the first spouse to die, we lose it. And so there's these sub-trusts that we create that are creatures of the tax code that preserve the lifetime exclusion of the first spouse to die. By the way, these are very powerful and important when we're dealing with what now is the case in almost half the time, where we have people in a second or third or fourth marriage, children from more than one relationship. We're wanting to have some level of confidence that when I die, my separate stuff, I want to take care of my spouse, but I don't want to disinherit my children. These trusts perform an important role in that as well. I'm going to take that off there. I just want to mention that that's part of the planning that goes into this trust. And this trust is a dynasty trust that has a very significant meaning. And I want to put a list of things on here that I want to talk about. And here's a factor for you to be aware of. The reality is that by the time your children inherit from you, they're more likely than not going to be old. They're going to be at or near retirement because that's how it works. Think about it. If you're old enough that you've already inherited from your parents and they've passed away, here we go. This is what I'm looking for right here. Then you're probably at or near retirement age. So this dynasty feature anticipates that, because here's the deal. If your children inherit from you and they follow the trend, the macro trends that's happening in society at large, and the next generation destroys the wealth and only 9% makes it to generation 3, we screwed up. Because in the process of destroying the wealth, guess what? That does a lot of damage to the people. So if we care about the people really, and we want to be kind to them, we're going to structure our affairs in such a manner that it helps them and does not hurt them. And there's a ton of stuff, and I don't want to get bogged down too much in here because I want to show you some more business stuff. But if we get it that, okay, my kids are going to inherit this and I'm not going to let them destroy it, and the effect of that will be that there's going to be something left over when they die. In which case, now it's a multi-generational trust. And a few things I want to point out here. The spendthrift clause means that it's protected for the non-grantor beneficiaries, so not you, from your children's in-laws, divorce, bankruptcy, medical issues, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people come to me and say, I love my children. I even love my son-in-law and my daughter-in-law, but I don't want them to get the money, or I don't want them to divorce my child and run off with the inheritance. Can I protect against that? And we can. I also want to point out that these dynasty provisions, the generation skip tax thing there, that GST, that's a little bit esoteric. and something that candidly a lot of trusts have, but it gets sabotaged because it's poorly designed. That allows assets to go from one generation to the next, 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 and indefinitely, theoretically. And there is never an estate tax. There is no transfer tax on death. So an estate, normally if you're paying that estate tax, and there's been tons of studies on this, every generation pays a tax. So you get this 40% carve out that goes to the IRS, and the wealth is unable to grow. If we can eliminate that 40% carve out, and if we can eliminate the proclivity of the next generation to squander the money on riotous living, then the wealth can grow and it can get very, very big and not very long. So that dynasty stuff makes that possible, which is really, really powerful and cool. There's a ton of other things in there that I don't want to take too much time on because I want to show you some other cool stuff.
The summary of all that, Rick, is what you and I were talking about. How do you protect the people from the money and the money from the people, right?
That is right. Well, in the course of, I kind of alluded to this, in the course of destroying the wealth, often that really does a lot of damage to the people because suddenly they can afford expensive vices. There's a lot of nasty, improper, and maybe borderline unlawful things that I would really like to do. I just can't afford to do them, but now they can, which is
right.
Why is it that you see entertainers and sports people struggle with substance abuse and addiction problems? Well, because they can afford it. And they think, oh, I have money, therefore I am immune from the problems of sniffing this nasty stuff up my nose. And they're not. It comes back and it bites them big time. So we could build in all kinds of protection for that. So yeah, Derick put it well. So we protect the people from the money and the money from the people. So both of them end up better off. This trust, if all we're worried about is the estate tax and it's a married couple, it can handle up to $30 million and we don't need more. If it's a single individual, $15 million and we don't need any more. But do we have more going on? Well, we do, as a matter of fact, because we have a business and we have partners. So now I want to show you, how do we structure things so that we have protected the assets, so that we are tax efficient, so we keep control as long as we are alive and able to have that control, and so that it passes to our family in a healthy manner and grows over time. There's some things we can do. There's some things we can study. And by the way, if we're going to look at this problem, it's fair to ask, are there people that have ever done this successfully? And if so, what have they done? And I'm going to show you because it's pretty cool. And I just wrote an article for a financial newsletter where we looked at people who have been attempting to do this kind of planning for 3 or 4 decades and have screwed it up. And there's a whole bunch of studies out there about, well, lessons I've learned from the last 40 years of doing it wrong. And I have to acknowledge that early on in my career, I had a mentor who was really brilliant and who's since passed away, but he taught me some things. And I was able to build on what he taught me and kind of adapt them as circumstances and the law has evolved. And some of that I'm going to share with you. And I have to give credit to smart people before me that have done some cool things and taught me some things. So I'm going to show you 2 structures here. 3 more. I'm going to move this little business entity over here. There are circumstances where this one trust is not enough. We want a second trust. And unlike this first trust, which is revocable, which means, among other things, that it's included in the taxable estate of our business owners here, and it's available to their creditors. So we want a trust that's not included in the taxable estate and not available to the creditors, and is going to implement all those multi-generational dynastic things that we alluded to. And that is a type of trust. I'm going to pull it down here and throw it on this diagram that we are going to implement like this. This has got a lot of data on here, and I'm sorry, but not sorry. We do that on purpose to help illustrate things. So what are the triggers for when we need this dynasty trust? And for business owners, a big estate at or approaching that estate tax threshold, that's one issue. When we want to do asset protection, when we want to do tax planning, when we want multi-generational succession, when we have multi-generational businesses, when you're going to actually involve the next generation in your business in some fashion, then this kind of trust becomes a valuable tool. Yeah, go, Derick.
Well, something else I wanted to say is my understanding is estate tax limit goes up and down, so you don't know exactly where it's going to be when you pass away. So once you get a substantial number, even if you're under that, these kinds of things start to make sense to consider at least.
They do. In fact, in the last decade, that number has flip-flopped all over the place, and it's very vulnerable to the political cycle. There are some politicians that think allowing a business owner to pass $30 million onto their next generation is evil, and they want to stop that. And they think, no, that's our money, and we're going to take that and do what we want to do with it. And you probably think, no, wait, I earned that money. That's my money. I want to decide what's going to happen with this. So it is prudent to protect yourself, not only from the predatory plaintiffs that want to sue you, but from the predatory politicians that want to figure out a clever way to grab your stuff and employ it for their purposes. So this trust becomes useful for all of those things. And I have to acknowledge, and in fairness, it's expensive. There's a lot of intellectual property that goes into this thing. It's like a expensive sports car that has a lot of incredible engineering in it. So when people go, wow, do I want to spend all that money? Well, I don't know. Do you? Do you care about the tax planning? Do you care about the asset protection planning and the other things? So I want to walk through some details with this trust. The grantor is going to be our clients, him and her. But they're not going to be the trustees, and they're not going to be the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries are going to be their children, son and daughter, or however many there are. And the trustee cannot be the client either. It can be the children. It can be another family member, a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, an aunt, or an uncle. It can be a CPA. It can be a lawyer. And if there are just no people available, it can, in some instances, be an institutional trustee. And if your estate is big enough, then you really want an institutional trustee. And actually, you want a more nuanced structure where there are both family members and institutional members and professional advisors, and they have a high functioning relationship to make this work. But some things that happen with this trust: it has an EIN. So it technically is a taxpayer, but we design it so it is grantor defective. Now, this is interesting. This is a part of the technical nuance. There is a tax penalty where under the tax code, you're going to be punished. And the punishment is you have to pay the taxes on something in a trust like this. And that's viewed as a penalty. Well, this started happening back in 1994, the first time we did this. So that's I was midway through my career at that point, not midway, but I was well into my career at that point, and we started using these. That penalty is sometimes better than the alternative. So we deliberately incur that penalty to cause this trust to be taxed to you if you have it. That actually simplifies your tax reporting and has a whole bunch of benefits that we don't have time to talk about. But the crucial thing is it's out of your taxable estate, unavailable to your creditors. And there's some things that should be done here. Life insurance is one of them. By the way, a lot of people don't know that if you own life insurance on yourself and there's a death benefit, you might think in your mind, I don't get that death benefit. I have to be dead for it to be realized. But under the tax code, that death benefit is included in and can be taxed as part of your taxable estate, unless it's owned by a trust like this. So sometimes you'll see reference in the literature to an irrevocable life insurance trust or an ILIT. That's a simplified version of this. This is like a turbocharged ILIT with a lot more power and a lot more capacity. So life insurance often gets owned down here, but the crucial thing I want to point out is the business interest. We're going to put business interest down here for a whole lot of reasons, and I'm going to back up and show you specifically what. And I want to use a couple of different entities here. I'm debating which one to use, but I think I'm going to use this one. we're going to use a limited partnership. Now, there are circumstances where we might use an LLC for this instead of a limited partnership. But there are some advantages to a limited partnership. They've been around for a lot longer. There's a lot more case law. They're better established on a lot of levels, and it's more nuanced for the IRS. The IRS goes, "Oh, a limited partnership. Okay, we know what that is." And sometimes with an LLC, it's ambiguous, and the IRS and others can get bamboozled by the nuances. So I like limited partnerships. Now, limited partnerships have two kinds of partners: a general partner and a limited partner. By law, the general partner has control and general liability. Ouch. By law, the limited partner has no control and no general liability. Now, I'm just going to show you the limited partners first here, because the limited partners are going to be these two trusts. And it's pretty straight up. We're going to have the blue trust here with its business ownership. Come on, baby. Let me get down here. And its business interest that was going to be owned right here. It's going to have a limited partnership interest, LP percentage, in some amount. And the other limited partner is going to be that irrevocable trust that we showed you here. Come on, baby.
And once you put that on there, Rick, zoom in just a little bit so we can see that entity a little closer.
Yeah, I will. I'm going to just get these lines on here so that they make sense, and then I'll zoom in. These lines are color-coded. So the green line goes to the green trust, and I'm going to zoom in on that and show you what this owns. And it's going to own some kind of an LP percentage here. So that we have these two limited partners, and I want to talk about the consequences of this.
I found this part really, really, really interesting.
Yeah, one of the consequences of this is now this entity, this family bank business limited partnership, is bulletproof from your creditors. So if you are, for example, a professional, you are a medical professional or an emergency room physician or a chiropractor or whatever, or if you have an auto shop or a bar or any other kind of business that has liability associated with it, and you personally have liability, you have a car accident or whatever, that liability cannot get into this limited partnership and take its assets. So what are we going to put in here? And one of the big things is all of your cash and investments and non-qualified stuff. Now, what is non-qualified? That's a technical term that all of your advisors know, but sometimes if you're not familiar with that, it'll sound confusing. What does that mean? Non-qualified means it's not in a retirement plan. It's not in an IRA or a 401k or a Roth, and it's not an annuities as well. So it's not a qualified asset, which is those kind of special retirement assets. So your regular portfolio that you have with your investment advisors, whoever they may be, where you have cash and stocks and bonds and private equity and your alternative assets and all those kind of things, we want them right here. And we also want to have low or no risk assets. And I'm going to put on here a note and deed of trust on your residence and maybe security on other business assets. And let me illustrate this here. So and then your subsidiary entities, one of the things we're going to do here is with your 50%, come on, baby, why are you being grumpy with me here? Here we go. Your 50% in your partnership here with your partner, you're going to put that 50% right here.
So the family bank owns 50% of your LLC with your partner.
Yep. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why we do that. But let me use as an example, well, let's talk about this note and deed of trust, but the same principle can apply to business assets. What is this note and deed of trust on the residence? We're actually going to set up a home equity line of credit. So it's going to be, I want to pull up the right little thing here. We're going to have this revolving credit line note secured by a deed of trust. Well, what the heck is that? Well, your residence is owned where? By your revocable trust. And what does that mean? It means it's included in your taxable estate and it's available to your creditors. Now, depending on the state where you live, there are some protections. There's a homestead exemption in some states, and that the dollar amount varies from state to state. And there's a limited amount of equity in your home that creditors cannot reach. However, a judgment lien against you is going to attach to your house, and it can make it impossible to sell and impossible to refinance. And you may have to stay there and wait it out. I actually have a client, I actually have about several dozen clients that this happened to. Some of you might be old enough to remember this. In the early 2000s, there was an internet bubble that popped and a big crash in the market. And we had a whole bunch of internet millionaires that lost a truckload of money. I have clients that had judgments against their home that have not been able to move for the last 2 decades because they can't sell their house. Now, they had their house and the house was protected, but they had to wait out the judgment. Well, we want to protect that residence. So we're going to set up a revolving credit line promissory note for you to borrow money from the family bank, and we're going to secure that with a deed of trust against your residence. Now, what does that do? What is it like? What does that mean? A revolving credit line is like a credit card. You can borrow against it and you can pay it off. So the amount that you owe can go up and down and up and down. It might be zero, or it might be maxed out to the limit of your credit card, but it revolves and it comes and goes. And a credit card is not secured. It's an unsecured debt, but this is secured. And that means that if there is a nasty event where you have some liability that comes to bite you, and they want to put that lien on your residence, they have to get in line behind your family bank. So we sometimes call this an equity strip. We obligate or strip the equity out of your house, and so you still own it. You still get a step up in cost basis when you pass away, but we can eliminate the equity from your taxable estate and we can protect from creditors. A really cool thing. And by the way, we can do similar things with rental properties or with business equipment. We have a lot of medical professionals, for example, that we will put security liens on their medical equipment so that if they have a catastrophic claim against them, their medical equipment is protected from the claim, and they can continue to their practice without having their means of performing their professional duties taken away from them.
So let me talk at the layman level real quick, Rick, on what I'm hearing is to the bank, let's say you go and do a loan, you can't make payments on it, or somebody sues you and they want to come after your money. Where do they look? They look at the house, they look at the business. They're like, where can we get money from this person, right? Mm-hmm. When they go to the house, it looks to them the same as if you had your mortgage, and then let's say you just had a second mortgage on it, mm-hmm. right? And so there's no equity, there's nothing to get. Well, in this case, that second mortgage is the line of credit to the business, but to them, there's nothing to get. If there's nothing to get, lawyers don't work for free. So they're like, okay, we're not going after that. Now they go over, they look at the business. Same kind of thing can exist there. They're looking at the business saying, we can't get blood from a stone here. I guess we've got to let this go. So it keeps them from doing that. But that's what it looks like to them. And that's what you want them to see. Did I say that wrong?
Yeah, no, you said it absolutely correctly. So, but I want to talk about two levels, because it looks like a snake, but it has a bite. And here's the bite. Usually the snake will go, oh, that looks nasty. Let's leave it alone. Don't pick that one up, because what's the point? You can't get blood out of a stone or whatever. But it has a bite, and here's the bite. Let's say they go, no, we're going after the house. we're going to attach our judgment lien and we're going to take it. Well, then do you know what you do with your deed of trust here and your revolving credit line? First of all, when you're in that kind of a situation, times are going to get tough. You're going to draw on that line of credit. You're going to borrow money from your family bank. You're probably going to spend it on legal fees. And then here's what we're going to tell you to do. Default on the mortgage on purpose. And when you default on a mortgage, what is the lender going to do?
Foreclose.
Foreclose. And here's the bite of the snake. So now your family bank takes your personal residence away from you and out of your trust and sticks it over here in the limited partnership, and we scrape off all the judgment liens of the creditors. So we protect the house. Now we have people ask, why don't I just put my house here in the first place? And there's lots of reasons. One is a house is a special asset for tax purposes. You get exemptions from capital gains and other things that you want to preserve. Number two, if you put it in a limited partnership, the IRS is going to think it's a rental property, and they're going to not allow interest deductions and other things. So it complicates the picture. So it's better to leave it out, leave it over in the revocable trust, and protect it in this fashion. And it's really cool. And I've had this, by the way, work many, many times on many levels with clients and others. So it is highly effective. I'm just going to tell you this. There's somebody who, if I told you their name, you'd know who they are. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but they had a $2 billion judgment against them. $2 billion. And we successfully protected their house and a lot of other assets by using these devices that I'm showing you here. So it's pretty cool. Well, now, what have I showed you here? These are limited partners. And what do the limited partners have and not have? Well, they have equity, but they have no control and no liability. Well, where's the control? And that's where I want to introduce this next entity here, which is something we call a family office. And this is typically going to be an LLC, most of the time taxed as a C Corp. I'm going to take that S out of there. I don't want that confused. And we will form this in the state that makes most sense. It may be where you live. It may be Wyoming or Alaska or some other place. Sometimes Arizona, sometimes New Mexico. It kind of depends on the variety of circumstances. And in this entity, we're going to put that general partnership interest. Let me get my little line here that does that. Here we go. We're going to put this 1% general partnership interest right here. Microsoft knows what you want, and they know better than you do. So they're going to tell you what you want here. Sorry, I have to badmouth Microsoft. But we're going to put that 1% general partnership interest in the family office. Now, what have we done as a result? The family office now has control. That's huge. And this is going to be structured so the manager of the family office, it does not own anything other than this 1% general partnership interest and some other things. But we're going to structure this, and there's some intellectual property in how this is structured. I'm not going to show you that right now. But you structure it so it's partly owned by the revocable trust and partly owned by this irrevocable trust. And we structure it so that actually you only own, like I will show you this piece. You are only going to own, I'm going to put this on here right now. You are only going to own, I don't want to move her, come on. I want to move this guy. You are only going to own usually 5% voting. And the other 95% is going to be owned by this irrevocable trust. So you don't even own it. So if you filed bankruptcy, for example, you'd say, what do you own? You'd say, oh yeah, I own 5% of this. What's it worth? Zero. And why does that matter? Because if it's worth zero, the creditors can't and won't take it. But what does it have that matters? Control, 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 control. This is where we control. This is the magic that allows you to, what's the old saying that is attributed to the Rockefellers, but actually is older than that?
Control
Own
everything
nothing but
and own
control
nothing.
everything. Yeah, this is where we have, we're not going to own it, we're going to control it. So that control gives you the ability to control everything that's in the limited partnership. And oh, by the way, with our company over here, look at who we made as the manager, the Management LLC. So this Management LLC can draw management fees from the business entities, can draw management fees from the limited partnership. And what's it going to do with them? It's going to spend it. Because this is where you have business expenses, business vehicles, you can have shared employees. This can be your startup incubator when your kids say, hey, I've got this great business idea. Try it right here first. And if it doesn't work, well, you have a couple of nice write-offs. And if it does work, you spin it off and put it in a separate entity after you have proof of concept. And you generally put liabilities in this. By the way, as a tax matter, we want this to make a very small income. I generally say $1,000 or less, so that it actually makes an income and it pays a small tax, because that legitimizes it's a real business. It's not a hobby. It paid a tax. We made money. And you don't have to pay a lot of tax to be a real business. And you pay 37 cents in tax and you made a profit. You paid a tax. You're a taxpayer. So we want that business to be real. This gives you, by the way, this partnership C Corp combination gives you very powerful tax planning tools. And we can do cool things with retirement accounts, if that makes sense to you. We can do other things. And often, by the way, I'll just throw this in here. If you have a professional business or you have a side hustle, I'm going to put this here, professional practice. Often this is going to be taxed. You might want one entity taxed as an S Corp. In an ideal structure, you'll have one S Corp, one C Corp, and a whole bunch of partnerships, because that gives us the ability to channel the income through the most tax efficient path so that it gets to you. And on its way to you, we take advantage of all the available tax provisions that allow your net taxable obligation to be as low as the law permits. So it's a very powerful and cool device. And by the way, money can move in and out of these entities, and if you do it right, there's not a tax liability. These subsidiary entities that I've shown you here with this business operation, that can be infinitely scalable. So if you have commercial buildings and rental properties and a lab and a ranch in Wyoming and on and on and on, sometimes we see people put dangerous toys in an LLC so that their boats and their jet skis and their quads, if there's a horrific accident that results in liability, the liability is contained. So who needs this? I kind of want to jump to that. I think we're pushing our time limit here. Not everybody needs this. They don't. Let's be candid about that. And maybe you might need some of this now, but not all of it, but you're going to need more of it over time. So all of this can be implemented incrementally. We might start with one piece and add more as it makes sense. If you're, depending on your family structure, if you do or do not have children, we might do different things. If you have charitable intent, we might do different things. If you have offshore businesses, if you have what I just recently dealt with in the last couple of weeks was somebody has a huge software development company in India that they own, and so we dealt with that in a very specific way. So if you have offshore things, this is a generic structure here that can be adjusted and fine-tuned to fit your particular circumstances and goals, and it can be built incrementally. So who needs this? Again, the highly wealthy, if you're at or near or approaching, or you're going to be in the next 3 to 5 years at that estate tax threshold, you need this. If you're wanting asset protection, you need this. If you're wanting to do tax planning, you need this. Often, by the way, in the tax planning thing, even though you're going to see what it costs to set this up, and it's 5 figures. Yesterday, I said, it's going to be 5 figures. And the client goes, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I said, no, that's 6 figures.
Yeah.
No, only 5. But still, 5 figures. You go, what? But it's been our experience that often in the very first year, the tax savings will more than pay for it. Yep. And then you paid for it, and the tax savings keep happening year after year after year. So there is an investment to do this. And in fact, there's 3 costs. There's the setup cost, and that's real. There's the maintenance cost. And who's that going to go to? Largely whoever's doing your tax returns. Whether that's Brecken or somebody else, that's a reoccurring cost. The third cost, and this is very real, is the complexity. To get asset protection and tax planning, it's going to be complicated. In fact, that complication, by the way, really works well in asset protection. When you are sitting across the table from plaintiff's counsel and they go, we're going to sue you and take everything you've got. You can show them this diagram. I've done this, by the way. You slide the diagram across the table and you say these words. You can have what you can find. And by the way, I'm going to tell you where it is and you can't get it. I've seen lawsuits go away that fast. I actually had a client not long ago that in the first days of the litigation did that. And the plaintiff said, I'm going to sue you anyway. And 4 years later, the plaintiff said, oh, well, we can't get anything even if we win. And they dismissed the lawsuit. And the defendant, my client, said, yeah, we told you this 4 years ago. Give us our legal fees for making us go through 4 years of litigation that was completely pointless. And my client got $100,000 in legal fees. So now I have to tell you, there's 4 years of pain and agony and expense
between. So, yeah.
But still, the $100,000 of legal fees kind of offset that a little bit. So it's highly effective. So another time when this is crucial is when we're doing next generation planning. And I gotta add the human element in here. The most clever legal documents and entity structures will not compensate for a bad or dysfunctional family culture people. In fact, if the people are truly dysfunctional, they should not be serving as trustees. We should be getting professional people to perform those functions. But if you want not only to protect the money, but to protect the people, a couple of crucial things I want to just throw on the table here. The sooner you integrate the next generation into the decision-making process and giving them responsibilities and the opportunity to learn from their failures, the better. Remember the story I told in the beginning? How do you get experience? Bad decisions. One of the things I see that is really crucial is you need to let your kids make mistakes.
You need to let them take advice from TikTok and see that doesn't work.
Yes, but it's one thing to make a $10,000 mistake and another thing to make a $10 million mistake. Make some mistakes with a little bit of money so you can learn, yeah, well, that was stupid. I won't do that again. And even on a very tiny level, in fact, I'm going to probably close with this story. One of my sons was in the middle of college. He was working a full-time job because I didn't pay for his college. He had to pay for it. That was my rule. And we went to visit him. My wife and I went to visit him. And when we got there, his car was disassembled in 20 some odd pieces spread out through his driveway. And it was not functioning. And I found out that he was walking to school and walking to work. And he had a wife and 2 kids, by the way, at this point. So he was stressed out and just totally wiped out financially, emotionally, physically, in every way. And he was telling me about this. And I was looking at this car in the driveway. And I whispered to my wife, there's a garage around the corner. I've got cash in my pocket. I can pay to fix this car and I won't even miss the cash. I'm going to do that. And my wife, who was much smarter than me, said, "Don't you dare. That would be the worst thing you could possibly do." She said, "What he needs to be is he needs to be the man who can fix his own problems and provide for his family." And I go, "Oh, you're absolutely right. That's what I would have told my client. Maybe I should follow my own advice." So instead of giving him money to fix the car, you know what we did? We spent a couple of hours on my back under the car, helping him put those pieces back together on the car, and we fixed it. So the point of that is, you cannot use your money to bail your children out of their problems. You cannot use your money to buy experience for your children. You can use your money to give your children access to capital and access to opportunities to learn. And
Yep.
So a vital piece of this, in fact, one of the uses of the family office here, for example, is to give your children jobs and employment. All
Yep.
of my children spent the first decade of their life after they were 8 cleaning toilets, because we had an office and the toilets have to be cleaned, and you're going to do it. And we're going to give you money for that. And then, by the way, they did a lot of stupid things with the money, but then they learned, hey, that was stupid. In fact, my sister didn't do stupid things, and she has her money still, and I did stupid things and I don't have the money. I liked her plan better than my plan. So they were able to learn a whole bunch of lessons like that. So I'm going to end here. Let me tell you that the planning process involves an assessment. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? And what kind of plan is appropriate for you? And so we engage with Derick and his team to go through that process with you. And candidly, that's the funnest part of what I do. I would much rather meet with the people and help them design something that's going to make their life and their business better than sit at my computer and type out documents. Derick, I'm done. You can wrap this up however you like.
Well, there's a couple of things. One is, if you want to turn off your screen share real quick,
sure,
Rick,
yeah.
We'll give people a chance. I've got a QR code here where, you can jump in and you can look at having a quick meeting with our team. And what we'll do is we'll just kind of help you to assess, what it looks like and set up an appointment with Rick. His time is very valuable. So, always scheduling a time takes just a little bit of planning on that side. And we want to make sure that it's appropriate for you. So it should be a very short phone call with our team. But we're also offering, for those of you who do want to meet with Rick, or even if you don't, you can still go in and download the End of Life Lighthouse folder. One of the things that I found is really interesting is when you kind of prepare for end of life, it causes you to get organized for what's happening in life right now. And that's a good step in that direction to help you start to take this on, because to Rick's point, like, cleaning up messes is where we learn a lot, right? I found going through the process with Rick's team, every time I go through it, I learn new things and I get my act together a little bit more, right? Because to some extent, when you're thinking 10, 20, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years, 200 years in advance, you got to think things through. And most of us don't make that much time for it. So I found the process to be really good business and life planning. What do I actually want? Where am I going? What's going to be important to me? These kinds of questions that are really important. And even if you don't have all the answers, that's part of what this process will help you teach and learn, right? It'll teach you. So I think it's vital. I absolutely love what you said, Rick, about involving the kids in the business. So many of our business owners, they want to be able to pass things on. They're so busy building their business and they have no structure around it. But the things like you're talking, like we're huge fans of, paying the kids, but not just to clean toilets. As soon as they're old enough, have the kids start helping with social media, with customer service, with invoicing. I was doing payroll for my dad's construction company at 15 years old. And surprise, surprise, this is what I do for a living, right? But getting them involved to where you can pay them, because these kids are going to take this over. And everything I have read, and Rick and I have talked about this for a long time, is if the money's bigger than your kid's character, it's going to be a problem. If your kid's character and understanding is bigger than the money, then it's going to be a gift, right? And so it's your job as a parent, and this will help you to set this up to set your kids up for success. And, hopefully they don't need your money at all. If you look at how the Rockefellers did it, they actually didn't share business interests. They did charitable work together. And that was how the family did it. Now, nobody's livelihood's tied to it. They're doing good in the world. They're being taught to give back, and they can collaborate in a way that isn't like an existential threat if they don't get along, right? Like being cut out of the family money. They made their own money using the structures that they were taught, but they did charitable work together. So there's a bunch of ways to implement this, but the first step is you got to get in the conversation, right? And you don't always get to choose when you're going to need this stuff. So I think getting it in place, even at a basic level, as soon as you can, is absolutely vital. And as you can see, Rick could probably talk about this stuff for 10 hours and tell you stories and feed you through all the different possibilities. And that's why it's so important to work with someone to figure out what's right for you, how it can help you. But I guarantee you this process, at least for me, has changed the way I think about myself, my future, where I'm going, what's important to me. And that's pretty exciting. So if you would like to meet with Rick, scan the QR code, set up a call. We'll walk you through it. We'll get you set up. But at the end of the day, your life is yours. Legacy happens while you're alive, not after you're dead. And you got to start that today, right? So really appreciate you guys being here, investing in yourself. Rick, absolutely appreciate you taking the time. I know it's very valuable to be here and share your knowledge and experience. And I think that's it. So last chance, if you guys want to meet with Rick, go ahead and click the QR code here, set up a call. If you have questions, we'll definitely answer them, and we'll take it from there. But thank you again, Rick. I appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. Hey, it's been a pleasure, Derick. It's fun as always, and I really love working with you and your team.